Assalamualaikum. My name is Tuan Nurul Iza binti Tok Muhammad Farid from Tslb, and today I will be presenting my case study titled Language Development in a Multilingual Context, a case study of a 4-year-old child in Pakistan. So in this video, I will be presenting the summary and also the content in my case report that I've done in task 1. So in today's globalized world, multilingualism is becoming increasingly common. So many children, like all around the world, are exposed to more than one language from a very young age, whether through family, school, or the wider community. So because of this, multilingualism is often associated with benefits such as improved communication skills, better cognitive flexibility, and even more opportunities in education and also for their future careers. But however, as I put and discussed in my report, multilingualism is not always straightforward, especially for young children. It is because while it can be beneficial, it may also create certain challenges if the child does not receive enough support. So support can be from family, friends, also their environment. So for example, a child may hear multiple languages every day, but if there is limited interaction or guidance that's suitable, they may struggle to organize and fit themselves to use all of those languages effectively by themselves. So, this case study focuses on a young child in a multilingual environment and explores how her language development is influenced not just by exposure but also by interaction, environments, and also her learning opportunities. So in this presentation, I will first describe the case, then analyze the social and linguistic factors involved, while also relating them to relevant theories, and finally provide some recommendations as the case structure, as the case report structure. Okay, so first let me begin with the case itself. So in the report, the participant is a 4-year-old girl living in Pakistan. So she is raised in a multilingual environment where 3 languages are commonly used in her daily life, which is the Punjabi, Urdu, and also English. So Punjabi is her first language because it is mainly used by her mother at home. And so her mother spoke to her in a daily basis using Punjabi language. And then Urdu is widely used in the community where she lives, like the neighbor or even like anybody who live there, because most people there use the Urdu language. And English is also present in her environment. So from a very young age, she is exposed to multiple languages at the same time. So one important point to highlight here in my report is that the child is not involved in structured learning activities, such as preschool or early education programs. She does not involve in any of that. So this means she does not have regular exposure to guided teaching or interaction and peers. So instead, most of her time is spent at home. She often engages in solitary play, for example, playing alone with pets, rather than interacting with other children who spoke the languages. And this becomes important when we look at her language development. So at the age of 4, children are typically able to form simple sentences such as I want water or I am playing. Like she can tell what she wants to spoke about or what she wants to do. But however, in this case, the child has not reached yet the multi-word stage. So instead, her communication mainly consists of babbling, a few isolated words and gestures. Like she cannot form the perfect sentence to tell what she wants or to interpret what she wants. So, for example, if she wants something, she might point at it or use hand movements rather than saying a full sentence because she cannot able to make one. So although she is able to understand Punjabi and Urdu, she struggles to express herself verbally. So this whole situation shows a gap between her receptive skills, which involve understanding, and her expressive skills, which involve speaking. So this gap is one of the main issues that I highlighted in my report. So now we are going to moving on to the social and cultural context that I highlighted in the report. So the child's environment is highly multilingual, which reflects the reality of many communities. Like even not in the Pakistan, but in the Malaysia itself, we have the community where the multilingual is often used. Like we have the Malay and also sometimes a lot of household using English as the second language, and also maybe for the Chinese family they also use Mandarin, and also for the Indian family they will use Tamil and so on. So at home for the participant, Punjabi is the dominant language, while in the wider community, Urdu and English are commonly used. However, there are no such as clear boundaries between these languages. So the child may hear different languages from different people, and sometimes even within the same conversation. So, despite of her, because of her age, she cannot acquire it um, rightly for the languages. Like she cannot absorb it uh, rightfully, clearly, because of like the cross and the interference between all of the language at the same time. So for example, one family member might speak Punjabi while another may switches to Urdu or English. So this will create a situation where the child is exposed to multiple linguistic systems at once. So yeah, it is true that this exposure can be beneficial. It can, but while it can be beneficial, it also can be confusing if the child does not receive enough support to differentiate between the languages. So yeah, while it is a good and unique, not unique, while it is a good exposure, but if it not um, it is not guided clearly and truly, the child might be confused, and also she cannot use the language perfectly. So another important factor is the level of interaction in her environment. So because um, so the participant parents often have work commitments. So because of that, the amount of time spent with her also may be limited. So yeah, this can be like one of the factor why she cannot conceive the language clearly. So as highlighted in my report also, language development depends heavily on the interaction. So children learn language by listening, responding, and practicing through communication. So if the communication itself is not there, so will um, how do the child will do all of that to engaging with the language? So if these interactions are limited, then the child has fewer opportunities to develop her speaking skills. So yeah, it is important to the child to have that interaction so she can use the language, because if she's only like absorb but not let it out, so the skills also cannot develop. So although she is surrounded by language, the quality and consistency of interaction may not be sufficient to support her development fully. Okay, now I will explain about her linguistic development in more detail. So at 4 years old, the child has not yet developed the ability to form multi-word sentences. Instead, her speech is limited to babbling, single words, and small gestures. Apart of that, she also shows difficulty in pronouncing certain sounds such as F, S, and T. Like she did not have the phonological accuracy. Yeah. So for example, she may substitute these sounds with simpler ones, which indicates that her phonological development is still limited. So, in addition, she also struggles with longer words such as chocolates. So, chocolate has like different lexical chunks. So, this suggests it might be difficult to her whom does not develop her phonological development yet to pronounce these syllables. So this suggests that she has difficulty processing and producing more complex and sound patterns. So another key observation here is that her comprehension is stronger than her ability to speak. So for instance, she can understand instructions, like simple instruction like suitable for the 4 years old, like come here or give me that, but she cannot respond using complete sentences. Like she understands, but she cannot reply. So this gap between understanding and speaking is something I emphasize in my report, and it is quite common. So these like problems is quite common among multilingual children like her. So her reliance on gestures also shows that she is trying to communicate, but she just not able to do so. But she just not able to do so because she does not yet have the verbal ability to express her ideas fully. So overall, this section shows that the issue is not a lack of understanding, but rather a difficulty in expressing the language for her. Now, let's look at the contextual factors that contribute to her language delay. Like, what is the contextual factors that make her becoming that way? So, firstly, the first one is the lack of structured learning. So, the lack of structured learning here is the major factor. So, since she does not attend school or any educational programs yet, so she misses out on guided learning experiences where language is actively taught and practiced. Okay, so the proper structured learning, such as in the school or in school. So when in class, the students or the child will have the interaction naturally with her friends or maybe with their teachers. So when the interaction or where there is the need to communicate, so that's where all these children will use their language at the early stages. So, as for example, when children play together, they will naturally practice speaking, taking turns, and also forming sentences. However, in this case, the child does not have many opportunities to engage in this type of interaction. So that's where she is lacking. So another important factor is the lack of reinforcement. So as discussed in my report, children need encouragement and also feedback when they attempt to speak. For example, if a child says a word correctly and receives praise, they are more likely to repeat it. So that's where the reinforcement plays the role. So because of her limited interaction with parents because of the work, and also there's no peer interaction and so on, so the reinforcement also cannot be applied in in a for her to develop the skills. So in this situation, the child may not be receiving enough consistent feedback, which also affects her motivation and also progress in the language. So because of these factors, she will continue to rely more on gestures instead of developing her verbal communication. Moving on, so this case can be better understood through several theories. Okay, in order for us to understand the case better, I relate it with some and also several theories from different philosophers. So first, Vygotsky's sociocultural theory emphasizes that children learn through interaction with others. So Vygotsky highlighted that the interaction itself is the most important part. So according to this theory, communication with adults and peers helps children develop language skills. So in this case, we can see clearly that the participant or the child um, have that all the limited interaction and limited opportunities that reduce these learning opportunities for her, like reduce all of the opportunities for her to develop her skills. So for the second one is Piaget's cognitive development theory also suggested that children build knowledge through mental structures called schemas. So schema is like a mental framework or mental structure that helps a person organize and also understand information about the world. So basically, it is how our brains try to make sense of everything, and also it helps brains to understand something quickly. So the child's difficulty in forming sentences indicates that she has not fully developed the ability to connect words with meaning in a structured way. So that means she cannot um, perceive or understand things because of how she cannot and not able to understand things clearly. So finally, Skinner's behaviorist theory explains that language is learned through reinforcement, as I stated before, in the contextual factor. So when children receive positive feedback, they are encouraged to repeat and improve their speech. So in this case, the lack of consistent reinforcement also becomes a factor that affect her development in developing the language skills. So these theories, as applied in my report, help more to explain why the child is experiencing a delay in her language. Okay, so after we all know the significance, we also can think about the recommendations or like things that help to improve this problem. So based on the findings of this case, several recommendations can be made to support the child's language development. So firstly, for educators, it is important to create interactive and engaging learning environments. So as mentioned in my report, children learn best when they are actively involved. We need their participant, like we need their participation. So activities such as storytelling, role play, singing, and also group discussions can encourage these children to use language in a natural way because of the natural force. Natural, yeah, it will become. They need to use the language naturally. So, for example, storytelling will allow children to listen to new vocabulary and sentence structure, while roleplay gives them the opportunity to practice speaking in real life situation. So with that, they will know how to use it in a different situations, and how to use the language rightly. So in addition, educators also should provide consistent feedback and also encouragement. So when a child attempts to speak, even if it is not perfect, positive reinforcement can help build confidence and motivations. So this aligns with the idea highlighted in my report that reinforcement plays a key role in language learning. So with that constant feedback, so that's how they will build the motivation in themselves and also try to use the language correctly. So secondly, for parents, increasing daily communications is very important. So parents should try to engage the child in simple conversation throughout the day. So for example, they can ask questions like what are you doing or what do you want, and encourage the child to respond using words rather than gestures. So the constant interaction at home is also important. So it is also helpful for parents to model correct language use. So besides teachers in schools, parents at home also need to teach or guide the child into using the language correctly. So if the child uses a single word, the parent can expand it into a full sentence. So that's how we help them to practice their language. So for example, if the child says water, the parent can respond with, do you want water? So that's how the child will learn how words are combined to form sentences, and then they can express their ideas. So as highlighted in my report, consistency is the key. So regular interaction, even in short periods, can have a big and significant impact on language development for a child. So another recommendation is to create more opportunities for peer interaction. So the child should be encouraged to play with other children, either through playgroups or community activities. So this is where parents' roles also take part, where parents should not be too paranoid for their children to let them interacting with other people, because it is important for the child to have that interaction with um, other people or peers. So through this interaction, it will allow the child to practice communication in a social context, which is essential for developing conversational skills. Besides that, at the community level, access to early childhood education programs should be improved. Okay, because of the children need to develop these skills at their early age, so they have to be, to have the opportunities to be involved in the early education. So these programs will provide structured environments where children can learn through guided activities and also social interaction. So such environments are especially important for children in multilingual contexts, as they help organize and reinforce language use. Finally, it is also important to maintain a balanced approach to multilingualism. Instead of overwhelming the child with multiple languages at the same time, caregivers can provide more consistent exposure to one language in certain contexts. For example, one language can be used at home, while another is used in educational settings. So with this this way of differentiated use, so then the child can arrange or organize uh, their skills and also use the language more accurately. So this does not mean reducing multilingual exposure, but rather making it more structured and also manageable for the child themselves. So overall, these recommendations emphasize the importance of interaction, support, and also consistency. So with the right strategies, as suggested in my reports, the child will gradually improve her expressive language skills and fully benefit from her multilingual environment. So with that, I have come to the end of my presentation. Thank you for your time and attention. Bye.